Best thing about pizza dough and bread making is it's awesome workout. Anyone out there that's looking to get as shred as I am, joking, make pizza dough and eat lots of pizza. My name's David Nayfeld from Fico in San Francisco. Today we're gonna be gooping our pizza dough. What that means to me is ultimately just making your pizza much more nutritious and also digestible. The way we're doing that is we're focusing on using some more whole wheat flours. Also, we're using a sourdough starter. Why that's important to us is because using a natural starter rather than using something that you buy at the store is because the pizza goes through a longer fermentation. It has a chance to develop. Also, some of the gases get baked out. What that ends up doing is it makes you be able to digest the pizza more. Also, what it's gonna do is it's gonna have a much more pronounced flavor. So I'm gonna show you guys how to get together a nice sourdough pizza that you can even do in your house. Whether you're doing it in a wood-fired pizza oven like we are, or whether you're doing it on your grill, on a pizza stone, or in your oven. So check out the recipe below for our gooped pizza dough. And while you're at it, let's make sure that you're subscribing to Goop's YouTube channel for all sorts of really great content. So we're gonna get started here. We're using a type 85 bread flour from Central Milling, which we feel has a lot more flavor, and it also has many more nutrients than your standard overly bleached all-purpose flour. You wanna use fresh stuff, so try not to buy too much more flour than you're gonna be using in any given time. Usually by today's standards, you're gonna be able to find really nice flour in most of your kind of specialty stores. Also, you can buy this stuff online. So we have our flour here. We have our salt. We use a nice kosher salt. I really suggest you don't use an iodized table salt, but if you're gonna use something like a sea salt, expect there to be some small variations in the way that you ferment your pizza because the salt ultimately will slow down your fermentation. So here we have a Diastatic Malt Powder. Now what that's good for is that's gonna create a little bit of food for your sourdough while it's developing. Also what it's gonna do is it's gonna create a little bit of beautiful color in the dough. It's gonna create some structure, and it's also going to start creating a little bit of that ideal sourdough flavor. So once we have that in here, we're gonna go ahead and put our bowl in our mixer. We got our dough hook. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna measure out our sourdough starter from our kind of bulk amount here. The great thing about sourdough starters is you can use some and then you just refeed it and it grows and grows and grows. And if you keep your sourdough starter alive and you keep it healthy, it's always gonna be around for you. Sourdough starters are great for pancakes, they're great for waffles, they're great for making your own bread at home. Obviously, they're great for pizza. What you're looking for here is you have a really, really beautiful sour smell, nothing too acidic. You know, the lactic acid is really the predominant flavor. You don't have a lot of citric acid, which is a more sour kind of vinegary flavor. And you can see the bubbles inside the jar there, which are showing you that it's nice and it's alive. This part is the fun part. If you have any kids at home, make sure that you get them involved with this because all the kids love to get their hands dirty in this part. To make your own sourdough starter at home. It takes a few days and you really have to develop a relationship with it. But if you don't have the time to do this, check out your local bakery. Bakers are gonna be super excited that you're trying to make something at home and they're gonna be really pleased to help you out in any way they can. Oh, it's alive. I'm just gonna wash my hands real quick. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna take our sourdough starter and we're gonna get it put into ice water. What that's gonna do is it's gonna control the temperature of all of the ingredients as it goes into the bowl with the dry ingredients. We have our extra virgin olive oil. Really try to make sure that you get a really good extra virgin olive oil because ultimately it's not gonna have the same flavor. The nutritional aspect is obviously key for us at Fico and the pizza that we make there, which is why we think it's a great fit for Goop. So now that we have all of our wet ingredients together, we're gonna add them to the bowl with our dry ingredients. We're gonna start on speed 1, which sometimes is called stir. That way, we're not getting a bunch of the flour and the ingredients splashing out as they start to integrate together. So we're gonna slowly add the wet ingredient to the dry with the ice. So now that we have that in, we're gonna put a timer on for 2 minutes. So now that the first 2 minutes of mixing is done on speed 1, we're going to bring the bowl down and we're just gonna scrape anything that's left over on the edge. You just wanna make sure that you scrape it off the hook. These little tools right here is a pastry dough card. It's great for scraping bowls. So now we're gonna go on speed 2 and we're gonna do it for another 2 minutes. We're gonna go ahead and start our timer for that and we'll come back to it. So now that we're done with speed number 2, we're going to take a look. It doesn't necessarily need to be scraped down too much, as you're noticing. If the dough is really climbing up your hook, you can scrape it down again, but at this point we're looking good. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to speed number 3 for about 6 minutes. Now the dough is starting to slap around the bowl here, right? And it's coming away from itself. What you're gonna notice is as the dough goes further and further and further, it's gonna keep slapping around the sides. It's not gonna stick anymore to the bowl, and the dough will make its way down the hook. Now that's a great sign. That means that the dough is becoming more of a united form, right? The gluten elasticity is starting to be created. So at this point, you really wanna make sure that your dough is not overheating. Whatever you do when you're mixing your dough, do not try and touch the dough while the mixer's going. If you need to touch the dough for any reason, just stop it for a second, touch it, check out where it's at. Right now we're at 69 degrees, which is under where we need to be, which is fine. What happens when the heat goes above 75 to 77 degrees is that the sourdough starter will start to die. So you really want to keep it below. And if it's getting a little hot, you can go ahead and put the dough back in the fridge for about 20-30 minutes and then get it back in the mixer. Moving on to our next step, we're going to be going to speed number 4 for 12 minutes. So you'll notice that your dough is really starting to get worked really strong here. So the key is making sure that your dough doesn't start to tear apart too much, right? That is an indicator of is that your dough might be getting a little bit too worked because of the heat or the friction. Right now the dough is looking beautiful and smooth. We're almost gonna be done with our mix, and then we're gonna go to our rest and fold portion. The temperature is now 73 degrees. We're in a perfect spot to pull the dough out and start resting for the next step. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna get our dough out. We're gonna disconnect our hook here. If you make your dough properly, your hook should come off clean and your hands should be relatively clean as well. We're gonna transfer this into another bowl. At this point, you're gonna wanna cover it with something. I prefer not to use plastic wrap because obviously there's enough plastic floating around the earth for a lifetime. So you can go ahead and just use a towel if you'd like to cover it up. Get your towel underneath your bowl, try to get it as secure as you can. Moving forward, what we can do is start working on our toppings and get any of our prep out of the way that we need to start working on. So now 45 minutes later, we're gonna unwrap this and we're going to go ahead and fold it our first time. I like to use a little bit of flour on my fingers there so I can get the edges out. And you're gonna take one end and you're gonna bring it to the center like so. Then you're gonna take the next end and pull it out and bring that to the center. And now, once we've gotten all the ends brought to the center, we're gonna take the whole mass of dough and we're gonna flip it over and tuck it back in and let it rest for another 45 minutes. So as you're going through the fermentation, temperature control is really important. So try to keep it between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. If the refrigerator is your only option, that's fine, and you're gonna be able to do that. It's just expect a longer fermentation time. So moving on to our last fold. We're gonna let it rest for 1 more hour before we start our shaping process. Cover your dough and keep it in a cool area. So we're gonna start prepping our dough boxes. We're gonna take a sifter here. We're gonna take the same flour, the type 85, and you really don't want too much of a layer of flour on your dough box. So just as little as you can, getting a nice even layer at the bottom. So now we're at the end of our resting and we're gonna start shaping our dough. At the restaurant, we use a scale and we scale our balls out to about 300 grams per. If you don't have a scale at home, you don't have to worry about it. I like to dust our wooden counter. Let's dust it with the same flour, nice and evenly. We're gonna pull our rested dough out. Now at this point, we're gonna kind of move quickly because we also don't want the temperature of the dough to come back up. We're gonna take a metal bench scraper. If you don't have a metal bench scraper, you can use the plastic dough separator. If you don't have that, you can use a knife. So we're gonna take a little bit of flour and put it on our bench scraper. A little bit of flour on our hands. Develop a ball that's roughly around 300 grams there. So once we have that ball, take a little bit of flour and we're going to start shaping our dough. And the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna take all of the exterior parts and move them into the interior. So that way what we have at the end of it is a nice smooth dome. Now at this point, your hands are lightly floured and you're gonna start kneading using the heels of your hands to knead the dough properly inside. Don't work the dough too much, and also don't let too much of the heat of your own hands go into the dough. Now that we have a nice smooth dough, we're gonna transfer it to our dough box, and we're gonna do our second piece here the same way. And you put it into the dough box here, making sure that you have enough space in between both. This is roughly gonna grow to about 1.7 to 1.8 times the size that it is now. So think about the amount of space that you're gonna need between the edge of the box and between the two doughs. Because if they do touch each other, it's not the end of the world, but what you're gonna get is a misshapen pizza. You want these to grow to be nice and circular, so that way when you're shaping it later, you have a nice even dough that's gonna bake evenly and you can top evenly as well. Okay, so now that we've gooped our pizza dough, make sure that you comment in the section below. I'm super stoked to show you guys the next video in which we're gonna be making some pizza with GP.
Ooh la la. Can I eat it?
Of course you can.
Mmm.
Not bad, right?
Oh my God.
Check it out.